Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Mat Chat. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Pleasure today to be joined by my buddy, the head coach of the Michigan Revolution Wrestling Club and the brains behind the Michigan Border Brawl, Mario Flores. Mario, it's you haven't done much this summer, so it's I figured, since you've been on vacation, I'd get you on the air.
Yeah, took a little hiatus. Yeah, right.
3-month siesta. Just kind of hung out and did nothing.
Oh my gosh.
How are you, man?
Good. It's a week since Fargo, so I've been back I think I got back last Saturday. So been back eight or 9 days now, and I'm just starting to get my voice back. So
yeah. Let's set the table on that because we've got another match in the can. So we're recording this on August 1st. It'll probably come out, I guess, around the 10th. But just so people understand. So let's start with that subject. So I talked to a friend of mine a couple years ago, Cornell Robinson, who's actually just coming back now from the U17s. They had a historic run there. But he's a guy that's been on those national teams. And even when he wasn't, and was getting there, coaching his kids all year round. And we talked about the importance. Let's talk about it from a coach's perspective first and then an athlete's. The importance of taking, and I want to say this the right way, a mental health break, not to imply that anybody's mental health is wrong, okay, or has a problem, but just to not be literally not on the grind 24/7, 365. So as a coach, and you coach your coaches, you have a staff, you have some grinders over there. How important is it for you as the leader, say, guys, gals, go be a parent, go be a spouse, go be an aunt or an uncle, go take your kids to Chuck E. Cheese kind of thing,
So recovery is one of the most important parts of periodization, right? When you're talking about a national training cycle, and the people that are coaches that did the turnaround, they went to Fargo and then they jumped to the world championships. They're hats off to them. I mean, this is what they do, right? So they're doing it at such a high level. Those guys are awesome. And to be able to do that is it takes a lot to jump, come in, jump on a plane, whatever travel looks like these days, and then go set a world record for or at least an American record for winning that title. So hats off to them. That was an awesome showing. But I think when you're talking about willing success, you're pouring so much into kids or the program or the whole body of the Fargo experience. And some of the teams that have been able to do it for a really long time and do it well, there's so many moving parts, and they have all the right people on the bus. And so again, it comes back to your coaches and the athletes and the families that are behind you. And that little bit of trust, because we're going to go into deep water, is going to matter. But then you're putting so much into each other that you need a break. You know what I mean? And that's it. That piece that says, hey, we're going to come back, we're going to celebrate, we're going to process, we're going to decompress, we're going to digest that moment or that experience, and then we'll reconvene in a couple weeks is just good for everybody. Right. I think that the level of stress for a parent that says, hey, I've got a kid that's wrestling at this high level, and parents love their kids so much that they don't want to see them fail, or they're working through things. So then it's like, oh, okay, that was a lot for them. And they're like, that was a lot for me as a parent. And then the athlete is like, holy crap, I navigated that Fargo, right? I mean, you're talking record-setting Fargo of all time. Right. Almost 7,000 athletes. And then, I mean, women's brackets were 128, 256 on the boys. I mean, you had some big brackets, and having to kind of navigate that, the weigh-ins, the whole travel, the recovery, if you're going to do both age groups. I mean, there's so many moving parts, different warm-ups, different hotels. Did you or did you not stay in the dorms? I mean, there was a lot happening. And for us,
air conditioning or no air conditioning?
Yeah, AC, no AC. Are you eating? You get ice cream choices in the dorm. And if you're in the cafeteria there, you get you want to put something on your sundae? and then still try to make weight. And you're like, oh, I'm so close. So just that wedge of torture.
It reminds me, my sophomore year in Missouri, there are more matches now. Back then, I wrestled 36 matches. Lucky enough to win state that year and wrestled 72 matches from March to Fargo. But Fargo back then was Northern Iowa. Okay. And back then, cadets and juniors were different tournaments, like literally different locations. And I was lucky enough to win cadets in Greco, and I lost in freestyle. I was winning and got pinned with like 10 seconds left and got dropped down to the 5th place match because it was pools, like, ABC, and I had the least amount of good points. And so I was upset. I won for 5th and came back and then was like, I want to go, like, let's go. And I came into the room and my dad goes, get out of here. Typical Japanese loving experience. He goes, I go, what did I do wrong? He goes, nothing, just get out of here. I go, what? All right, I'm gonna go lift. He goes, no, go home. He goes, I'm like, what did I do? He goes, just go be a kid. I go, what do you want me to do? He goes, I don't care. Go play wiffle ball. Which most people these days wouldn't even know what wiffle ball. I don't know. Maybe wiffle ball is still a thing, and for 2 weeks, my brother and I just went to the pool and hung out and got to be kids. And what's crazy is that's actually where I hit my growth spurt. I gained like 15 pounds and it wasn't ding dongs and, Twinkies. It was, I just like all the lifting finally stuck a little bit and I didn't get big.
You were able to eat, right? Eat like even whether you didn't eat good or not, you were still eating like a healthy diet. And then your body has been holding on. And so now when it gets everything that it's supposed to, you have that big growth spurt. That's why kids jump from, certain ages, that freshman to sophomore, that first year of cadets, that's, where they're, jumping age classes. So they're like maybe a 106 pounder, and then they're like a 132 pounder the next summer, just, that huge jump where kids get to do that. Yeah. We saw that this year, like 100 pounder now is like 117.
Yeah, I went from 119 to 132. Yeah,
exactly. I think I went to like 103 and a half, like 122, 123.
3 and a half. It's like I'm 5'5" and 3/4.
It's dude, it was brutal.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think that's good. We have a lot of coaches and parents that watch this. I think it's good to understand that sometimes, and that less is more. That like sometimes saying, look, we're just going to do a 20-minute spar today and just work through this one position and try to get you more comfortable and then get out of here. Go with your friends, go to the mall, or I guess nobody goes to the mall anymore. Go do whatever, go play video games or whatever it is. And it's important I remember Randy Couture was telling me that he was at the World Championships one year and like, it's like 3 days out and the Americans are all doing like hard workouts and the Russians are over there playing dodgeball or handball. And he's like, we were laughing at them. And he goes, and 4 days later, they were laughing at us, and we've caught up. America's clearly caught up and understands that now that there's, like you said, periodization and peaking. And, there's times to grind down and just get worn out. But
yeah,
go ahead.
We did that. We did like before, probably in between junior duels and Fargo, we took that next 10 days and we lifted heavy. We pushed a lot of sleds. We blew our lungs out on the Jacob's ladder. And it was really just preparing for that tapering part. And so when you put so much in, we were protein loading, just really getting our bodies set for the, for the cut. And then also the hard tournament, the wear and tear of the tournament, So it was, getting ourselves all packed and loaded full of water. And then once you get to start tapering, it literally was, let's spar for 30 minutes. Let's go over this position. Let's watch film and then go work on the position. And then you get a little workout and then you sweat the rest of the practice. So, but because you're about to beat your body up and everybody does it differently. I mean, I feel like our approach, it worked. We had a lot of success. So
sure.
Trying to do something right.
For coaches that are on the come up, right? Because, and you're a very humble guy. I wouldn't say now, like, you're like, hey, we're good. We've arrived. Like, there's always more to do. But for a program now that is recognized as one of the best clubs in the country, for sure, on any sort of metric, like, personalities aside, like, full disclosure, we're friends. You helped me with my event, but you're on the pod because you guys crushed it. If you took 27th, I've been like, man, got to do better. And we'll get you on next year kind of thing. I mean, that's real, right?
Yeah.
That's absolutely real. Talk about the specificity of the training cycles. Like you mentioned some things there, like sleds and Jacob's ladder and protein loading. And for coaches that maybe want to do this stuff and really have no idea, maybe either what you're doing or like where you went to go to study this, like where are things laid out? Who are your mentors on this? Because you didn't make this up out of nowhere. Nobody really invents anything anymore. It's always paying it forward or backwards kind of thing.
I think looking at about who's doing it right. I think I had good mentors growing up and professionally more than anything. Obviously, I had a great college coach with Mike Shadwinkle and some other guys that we worked with, and then coming back working with ton of different guys. So I used to go out to Cornell all the time and work with Mitch Clark and talk about stuff like that. So we would ask a lot of questions, and then being able to do the tours that I've done with the Battle of Boston, all the things that we've been able to do, we've been able to pick a lot of different brains, right? So when we were on our tours, we've been able to go to every major club and college in America and sit there, and then after you work out, I mean, there's a little downtime where you ask the right questions, you socialize, you do that. But for me personally, I always took advantage of the moment, and I think that every person that's done it well, right? So when we were at Virginia, or we were at Stanford, or wherever college or club we were at Izzy Style. We went to, we went to a ton of these places. Went to Powerhouse in Iowa. So we went to like these guys that have been doing it for a long time. They've got it. So you get that little bit of time, and I picked their brain, and I did. I just saw Keith Massey at Fargo, and I had a question, and I was like, hey, let me steal 2 minutes. And we were in between sessions, and I was like, let me ask you this question. And it was a question about the next step. How do you keep it going? Right. And I was like, what did you do when you were maybe graduated a group of athletes? So you have a group of kids that are really special. They've gone through the whole system. They're, 6, 7, 8 years into your program, and then they graduate on. Right. And how do you reintroduce the new type of athlete where they've been in your club for 3 or 4 years, but they really are still doing other things, and they're not really on the national training cycle yet. Right. So they're like, oh, I'm going to do this. I might come to a drop-in. I might do this. Well, I'm going to go over here. And they're really not fully committed to A, your program, or B, to their own success yet. Right. And so I really was able to sit down and kind of lean on him and take, the information he gave me, and then kind of took it and ran with it a little bit and applied it to, maybe another, couple of other conversations with people that I look up to. So, or at least respect in the game.
One of the things I was telling somebody, this maturity level that I think I've hopefully jumped, is I used to get really upset when somebody would ask me for advice and then not do what I said. And what I realized is, well, this person probably asked 8 people for advice, right? And even if the respect is that you were one of the 8, not whether or not they do what you say, right? Yeah. And like, for example, when you were saying what you asked Massey about, in my mind, it's like you have this group of the Bomberitos and those people, and we'll get into some names so you can give people shouts here in a little bit, but they got you here. At the end of the day, the athletes are the ones winning the matches. Okay.
They tell me that all the time. When we do stuff, they're like, hey, just so you know, we are the club. And I'm like, yes, you
of course.
Are.
But
yeah, 100%.
But those kids that get you there, it's like, okay, but now we got to stay here and get better, and we can only wish you luck and still be in your circle of influence and be here for you as you go forward, but it's time to hand you off to the next set of people. And so I'm sure if 7 people gave you advice, you're going to get 7 different pieces of advice, and some of them are going to be in conflict to each other. You're going to have to decide which one fits what you believe in your personality. So I think that's important too for people that are smart enough to give advice that people come to them. And again, maybe it's just me aging, but I'm like, the point is they asked, like, don't be offended if, if not everybody does everything you say. So, a question popped up in my head as we were talking about when you're grinding, right? Like, I don't know how many kids are in your club, but it's, like we just had Seabold and Fellers on, and, same, and, obviously they're in Iowa, and just the whole concept of Iowa is we're blue collar, we work hard, and they talked about that. Like, people think there's a shortcut. There isn't. We just work really freaking hard and try to work smart. How is it if, let's say, for example, I'm in your club and my parents are getting divorced and I found out my girlfriend's cheating on me and my favorite grandma just went in the hospital. Okay. So I have a legitimate reason to not be locked in, right? Like, I think any of those things would be enough to be not locked in. And I'm 16, 17, 18 years old. So I have the mental capacity of processing and multitasking and compartmentalizing of a person that age. How is it, I assume, that you would say, let's do something a little different with you today? How do we do that and not make it look like we're playing favorites and not put my business out there for everyone in the club to know? Because I think those are the tricks of coaching that there's no handbook for that.
Yeah, that comes down to deposits and withdrawals and relationships, right? Knowing your athletes. If every day I'm depositing something, a positive inside of your bucket, I know that I'm going to have to take that withdrawal someday, right? And that's the relation, the athlete, I guess athlete family, coach family relationship is like, I know a lot about, the personal lives of my athletes because they're so intertwined, right? And so being the extension of the family, right? Whether it's a father figure, whether it's a role model, whether it's the uncle, what role we're playing, it allows us to, and obviously wearing the coach hat at the same time, maintaining that boundary at the same time, you're jumping into some intimate life spaces, right? And so how do mom and dad are going through this, or someone's got sick, so and so got sick, and so lost a job, and how do I maintain training? Well, the training is the complete picture, right? So when we look at periodization, I'm not going to get the most out of the athlete if they're not present, and if they're not into the practice, then sometimes we're going to step back, and that's it. If you want to be a winner, it's like not everything's going to be great. Some days you're going to feel great. Some days you're going to feel bad. And some days you're going to feel average. I mean, it's just it's my bad workout day, and they'll come in and I'm like, dude, are you all right? And they're like, whatever. And I'm like, just get through practice. We'll figure it out afterwards. And then after practice, they decide to stay. Right. And maybe they're sitting in the office here, or that couch, everybody, naps there. It's like our therapy couch. They come in and they'll talk about it, and we'll jump into it, where sometimes they're so upset, or they got so many things happening. They're like, I'm out of here. And then whoever stays, they stay, and they hang out, they do whatever. And then my phone will buzz, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, coach. And I'm like, what's up? And then we kind of work through it, and we're like, we'll come in early. You know what I mean? And mostly, at that time, it's we don't need to jump into stuff that late. So it's like, hey, take a shower. Did you take a shower? Did you get something to eat? Did you rehydrate? I'm so good at, compliment them. Yeah, I'm glad you got through practice. Yeah. Call me tomorrow. And then, hey, come in a little bit early. We'll kind of hash through this, and work it out. Right. And so, I'm validating that something was going on, and at the same time, I'm creating a space for them to kind of jump through that, and we can work through that thing individually, where maybe not everybody's here, and then sometimes they need a friend here, so a couple of them that kind of know about each other's situations, because the kids talk, they know more about what's happening in the club than everybody else, so. Maybe so-and-so will come in and they'll be like, oh, we're going to work out. And then coincidentally, they're both here to kind of work through whatever issue we had to work through. So it's a balance, I think.
I think that the kids, I remember when I was coaching, like I told people afterwards or during it, I'm like, the head coach might know 10% of what's going on. An assistant coach might know 20 to 50% of what's going on. You have to trust your kids to build an environment, and not so anybody rats anybody out, but are like, hey, Mario's in a bad space mentally. Like, here's what happened in his life, coach. And you didn't hear this from me, but he needs somebody to go put his arm around him and, like just go to dinner with him or whatever, like just talk to him after practice and you just say, look, bro, we love you. We're here. You seem like you're a little down today. Just if you want to get it off your chest, we're here for you.
Yeah. And I've been there. I've been on the positive side and on the receiving end where my coaching strategy that day was totally off. And they'll be like, hey, leave him alone. Leave her alone. And I'm like, she's not working hard. We didn't blah, blah, blah. And then someone will be like, totally get their back and jump all over me. And then, and I'll be like, bink, coaching will go off and I'll be like, oh, different approach. And they'll be like, dude, so they broke up with their boyfriend. They broke up with their girlfriend today. They got in a big fight with their mom today or dad or whatever, they got a big test coming up or whatever it is. And then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. So then just like at the break, I call water break. I take a swallow of water and reevaluate. And then my coaching strategy has to immediately change for that athlete. Practice doesn't change or whatever, but my approach, maybe I start recognize them in a positive way, and start building them up. Mostly we try to build them up all the time, but sometimes I ride them. Got to.
Yeah. I have this thought, and everybody I've talked to on this podcast, and I'm blessed to talk to really great minds, right? Like if, somebody, I've talked to people like, man, you understand a lot about wrestling. I'm like, well, I talk to 50 brilliant people a year, so like, and that's like, those are just the recorded conversations. Like, I think champions crave structure. Like, I think, like if I came up to Michigan and you said, hey, coach, you want to run a practice or part of practice? I would, it'd be an honor. But I don't think I'd be like, guys, let's just play some dodgeball and figure out which one you want to get better at. Like, you're like, no, okay, never mind. Like this is what we need to cover stuff today. Or you might say like, look, we want to work on short offense or we want to work on whatever. But I think like once in a while, you could have, take like maybe the greatest American wrestler that's still going historically, Jordan Burroughs. I think you could go to Jordan Burroughs once a month. Hey, what do you want to work on? What do you think you need to get better at? But you can't do that 29 days out of 30. He's like, you're my coach.
Yeah.
What do you think I need to get better at? And how do you think I need to accomplish that? Do I need to get more explosive? Do I need to work on technique? All that stuff. So here's another thing I'm interested in. And I've asked, I asked a lot of people this off the air, but I don't think I've asked him much on the air. How much do you think of coaching is technique versus toughness versus emotional maturity? And I'll preface this with a saying, and then I'll get out of the way because I'm very interested in the answer. I was at an Oklahoma State practice. I don't know. This must have been like 15, 16 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 20. And it was a camp. And in between, the team practices. And Coach Smith was very unhappy with the level of intensity or enthusiasm. And he brought the kids in and the guys in and goes, do you know how hard you have to work in an hour and a half to not get tired at 7 minutes in Carver Hawkeye Arena? Because that place is an energy sucker. I mean, when somebody says you got carvered and that's a verb, that's a real thing.
They just drain you just to go in there and the crowd drains you and they're just stalling and you're just.
Oh yeah. We were on the floor.
It takes all the energy out and it puts bricks in your feet. You're like,
yeah. And we watched Penn State sort of really do a good job with it. Like it got to Berge, but that was like his second match back. And that's just horrible, and he was up at 65, versus getting down to weight. But like, the RBYs, Starachis, those guys, so, that's okay. So they do a really good job of controlling their emotions versus their emotions controlling them, which from the time you're old enough to understand that statement, somebody who's a mentor in your life is telling you that. Like, if right now I call you a bad name on the air, you get to decide how you react.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think the goal of being, I think that's where you can separate, like you can draw a definitive line as an adult or as a professional, is emotional control. Can I react and not go over the edge, right? Can somebody confront me? Can somebody, whatever, and still I can maintain my professional, demeanor or emotional control? Can I do that? Can I not respond, erratically? And I think that's a huge measure of a coach. Can this person go into receiving, an outburst it doesn't even correspond. The reaction is, and the outburst doesn't respond to the situation or whatever. And then can they work through that? So,
what do you do to coach kids like that? Like to say, I'll tell you what we used to do, and I think I would do better now. Like we used to say, like, let's say, I think you're younger than me. And so I go, hey, Mario, I know you and your girlfriend broke up, but look, man, we got 2 hours here. And I don't mean this to be harsh, but when these 2 hours are over, you and your girlfriend are still going to be broke up, but you have to decide if you want to get better at wrestling today.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the best approach. I think now there's probably a little more kumbaya to it, but at least I think that's what's out there. And I'll tell you a very quick story, because I was on my way to the Beat the Streets gala, and one of my ex-wrestlers called me and goes, Coach, I owe you an apology. And this guy had wrestled for me 20 years ago. I said, I don't think you do, but go ahead. And he said how there'd been an argument, and he kind of got in my face and was actually thinking,
I'm gonna swing on Coach.
Yeah. And he's a lot bigger than me. And he goes, I just had a young man do that to me. And he goes, I held my tongue and I didn't do anything. Because I walked away. And he goes, I remember you walked away. And he goes, I remember you never held it against me. You never even brought it up. And he goes, I realize now how grown up that was. He goes, because, I know if a person had done that to me 10 years ago in my coaching arc, he goes, I wouldn't have done the same thing. And he goes, so it was awesome. He didn't owe me an apology. But it was an awesome growth conversation. And it's amazing that kids remember things, that you barely remember.
Yeah.
So what do you do to help people grow emotionally, to basically, just for the sake of wrestling, learn how to compartmentalize?
Well, part of it is situational, right? And we have to be able to still meet the goal. So when we're in practice and we're in passing and we're in conversation, again, those deposits that talk about, reactions and responding like a champion, you're saying, listen, you're going to, my mom used to do it with me and like just in Christianity and who God is in my life. Right. And she used to be like, I'm not telling you about it for today. I'm saying someday you'll be in this situation. Right. Yep. And so the same way I try to talk to my athletes, I'm like, someday you'll be in this situation and we're going to have to evaluate in a short amount of time, what is our goal? And so if the goal is to make a world team, but you didn't, but you lost in the semis, now you have to come back and still get third so you can make the U.S. national team, right? And so that you can get all the camps, you can be available, you can get the Pan Ams, you can get some of these things.
The alternate. Yeah.
The alternate, right? Like but I'm like, you're going to get all the training camps. You're going to get all the stuff. You're going to be on Team USA. You're going to get these things as a consolation.
You get nice Nike swag.
You get nice Nike sweater. You get so much. There's going to be so many things behind it. Yeah. Where you're like, we have X amount of time to get it together. And if you just want to go home and go to the airport, guess what? We're on a flight tomorrow, so you're going to go home either way, right? But that other athlete wants you to go home, get out of the tournament right now, and they hope you don't respond. They hope that that you're still worried about what happened 20 minutes ago. And because if they can do that, then they get all those experiences. They get the sweet gear. They get to be they get the camps. They get the Pan Ams.
They're on the website. Yeah.
Yeah, they get all that other stuff. So if you want to be upset and you want to go home, fine, we're going to go home. But we're both leaving tomorrow at 6:30 on
Right.
the 301. And so
But the 301 is awesome.
Yeah. And so for them, it's like, yeah. And at that point, they have to look in the mirror and they have to respond accordingly. Same thing at the high school state championships or whatever, or youth state tournament. That third is third's a hard place to get.
Third's harder than second.
Third is harder than second.
Somebody say third's harder than first, and third isn't harder than first. Because first is you have to be the best. But second, the whole time you got second, you thought you were going to take first till they blew the last whistle. But third, you have to win a minimum of 2 matches knowing you can't get first.
Yeah. And I feel like in recruiting, I would take a guy that's got some or an athlete that's got some grit, some intestinal fortitude that says I can still recover after disappointment. And
we recruited a kid one time. He ended up being won nationals, but my dad goes, "How do you think he'll do?" I go, "He'll take first or sixth or second." Like that's it. We can coach him up. And then the funny thing was we went to a tournament early in the year and he lost to like a Stanford guy. Like this was, when JUCO was wrestling. And we just sat on the side and I said, this up to you. You're going to have to win 6 matches to take third. I said, and you can go out there and pretend like you tried and get beat, or you can go out there and I said, but you're going to be upset and sore tomorrow anyway. He won 6 matches, took third. I told my dad, I go, this dude going to win nationals now for sure. Because that's actually harder than him having to win 5 junior college matches on the front.
The backside, the guys that can lose early and then rally themselves back together, and they put an amazing tournament together. They're like, dude, that guy got on a run and he didn't stop.
Yeah.
We had an athlete double up. Yeah. Gigi Bragg was training hard and she lost in the quarters, and then she got third, and then she had to wrestle again in the junior division, and she lost 5-4 to Sterling Diaz, and then had to get third again. And you're like, that's a gritty kid who maybe came up short and then had to do it again, put the foot on their line and see where they're at, and then have to respond to adversity again. That's a heck of a tournament.
I think if college coaches are honest, recruiting, well, here's an obvious statement. Recruiting is critically important, right? But you kind of I think it's underestimated. I think coaching is overestimated. I think you're a great coach, but I think part of the reason you're a great coach is, and it's a chicken and the egg, you got a ton of great kids. So if you left the room for a day, couple days, maybe a week, these kids know what they're supposed to do. They're going to work out. Your assistant coach can run the room. There's not going to be a massive fallout. If you just had somebody that knew nothing about wrestling, the old Vision Quest coach with the golf shirt and the singlet pulled over the top, but you have all these kids that are freaking hammers, and the coach knew enough to let the kids coach each other. I think that's better than having the best coaching staff in the world and a bunch of kids that freaking have zero athletic talent. So it's interesting to watch when you get both, right? So let's get into some specifics, because I love talking to you and the time goes quick, which is awesome. So let's talk about, here's one subject I want to get to. Bomarito, Eliana Bomarito, 4-time state champ, multiple times Fargo champion, 225, 235, depending on the weight class, right? And the heaviest weight class in women's Olympic international wrestling is 76 kilos, which I believe is 167 pounds.
Yeah.
Plus or minus the less, that's within a pound. I think it's 167.2, but something like that. In most colleges, the non-junior colleges don't have a weight class that big.
Right.
So she's going to go to junior college. Let's make sure people understand this. She's not going to junior college for academic reasons. I think that's an important thing.
No, you're talking about an athlete who just doesn't have, that needs that's going for an opportunity.
Right. But I just want to make sure nobody thinks.
Yeah. You're talking 3.7, 3.8. I mean,
yeah.
Great.
Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And she's not going because like she's got social, like, you know, like she got in trouble socially. She's a great kid that just happens to be a big human being. She's not fat or obese or anything. She just is a big framed female person. And very cool what she did at Fargo, you know, the sign about the weight class and stuff like that. And I know that family a little bit, certainly not to the level you do, but they wrestled in the event. The mom's been incredibly supportive of everything that I'm doing and social and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. I think wrestling has figured out that being inclusive is good, that having women, girls, you know, depending on the age group, and that's sometimes I get trip up on that, but having females wrestling is good for our sport. I think it's very clear that our sport is good for anybody that does it because of all the lessons. What is the pitch? I'll tell you my pitch, and you tell the pitch for adding that weight class is always going to find girls that, if nothing else, just don't want to cut weight. Okay, people, doesn't mean just girls, guys, period. It increases your roster. It increases people paying tuition. It increases interest. Okay. The argument against it is, okay, but if they come here, they still can't go to the Olympics. You know, they can't even go to the world championships where there's 10 weights because that's still the ceiling weight, right? As of now, on August 1st of 2022. I know if I just talk to you about Eliana, we could just kill the rest of the time on the pod. I don't want you to do that. I want you to talk about the concept of what we're talking about here. Go ahead.
So when you're talking about opportunities and equity, right? Who gets what? The average American woman is 167 pounds. That's 50% of women could potentially, you know, wrestle for a world championship. And if you think about the percentage of people, it's a micro percentage get to be on the world team, right? Sure. And so there's only a very fraction of a percentage of people that really get a B, Adeline Gray, that get a B, these other athletes. So when you're talking about women in sport, and you're just talking about inclusiveness, and you're talking about just overall wellness, you're already talking about a population who is at a health risk, right? You're talking about a population of people, females, that are larger than the average, the 167, right? So everybody that is in that 167 to 235 range is already in a space where health could be an issue. So when you're talking about getting girls into wrestling, it has to be for everybody, right? And that's the big pitch was everybody. And so when you're talking about wrestling and you talk about the people that have done it and good and great minds, it's never about wrestling, right? It's about the experience and the relationships and the education and the impact they're going to have beyond wrestling. So whether they wrestle, we all have a wrestling ceiling. So if we can take those life lessons, and I think you're the one that says it the best, is life lessons for that are universal, right? They're not gender based. They're not age based.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you take people and you empower them, and you have strong women, encouraging building strong women. Now you have mothers that are their future mothers, future business owners, future employees, managers, all these hats that they're going to wear outside of that wrestling window to take these lessons and give back and build stronger communities. So for us to deny that group of people an opportunity to get all of that, it's short-sighted, right? It really is. And so
yeah, and just to jump in real quick, it's not just Bomarito. Like, okay,
Face Spicer from Missouri. You think of Savannah Isaac from Ohio.
No, that's what I was going to get to.
Calkins from California. I mean, you're talking about really high-level athletes. That's not just it's just not Bomarito.
No, she's the face of it.
She's the face.
Savannah Isaac, even Sabrina Noss wrestled at 180. And the funny thing was, so like we did an inventory of, and I'm sure it's almost impossible not to miss somebody. We went through all the results and pulled up from the Missouri Border Brawl in last September or October, I can't remember what month, and then Michigan Border Brawl in March. How many kids medaled at Fargo or placed at Fargo. 28 kids or 28 places. Okay. So like NOS counts as 2, like we're not.
Yeah.
Okay. And 28 places, 7 champions. And then I think we might have had one of the greatest high school matchups in the history that no one's talking about. We had NOS against Isaac, who both doubled up. And to give Isaac credit, she had a match earlier and doubled up and wrestled NOS that night.
Yes.
And so, like there are small things about wrestling and relationships that matter. Like I'm at junior duels. You and I got to spend some time together. I see Savannah Isaac, right? I don't walk up to those kids. First of all, I'm grown. She's a young woman. Like it's important to make sure you're 100% appropriate. But she walks up to me, gives me a big hug. She goes, "Hey, coach." I go, "Hey, how are you?" She goes, "You remember me?" I go, "Savannah Isaac, Michigan board." She goes, "You got it." Just a fist, just like, Nos, Bomarito, they all come over, say hi. And these are relationships like maybe in life later, like somebody's coming to St. Louis and they need a job reference, or, "Hey, do you know somebody in this area? I had a referee from Pennsylvania. So where should I take my kids? I'm coming through St. Louis." Like, and people know they can do that. Like I know now there's a couch for me to stay in if I go to Michigan, like these kind of things that people, I'm sure it happens in other sports, but we don't do other sports.
And the thing that going back to the heavier weight classes, 235, we'll just, those relationships or contacts are universal again. So like, I don't want to deny a kid based on their size to be able to have a couch to go to or a person to call, right? They're like, "Hey, coach, I got a job. I went to college. I got a job. I'm moving to St. Louis, right? My job offers in St. Louis. Could we get dinner and could we connect, right? Could you show me?"
Or like in your case, like, who do you know in St. Louis that could help me? And you're like, "I got a guy." That's how we met. That's how we met. Somebody
that happens.
connected us.
That happens every day. The network, in the wrestling community is small, so it really is. We're this group of people that compete without the end game, right? There's no professional stuff. I mean, obviously MMA and stuff like that.
No, Joe Rogan there's that video going out about just the purity of the pursuit of excellence in wrestling. And when a guy like him does it, his podcast is almost as big as mine, but when he's crushing it, that's so good for the sport of wrestling. Yeah.
That's it. And to have that voice go out and say, "Hey, this is a special type of human," right? And we can't deny this other special type of human the opportunity for the rest of the world to see their light because of their size, right? If your light is so bright, then the rest of the world needs to be able to see it, and we've got to be able to shine. And so these girls have huge lights and huge personalities, and to deny them that is just, again, maybe it's just timing, and we're going to get into it, but we're having the conversation, right? And it's the people that are that have a platform to go out and advocate for this type of person, and that's it. We have to be the voice for these girls.
I think the other thing is that, and I think this is just a fact, I'm certainly not for what I'm about to say, but the heavier you are, and especially in an age where there's a lot of immaturity in high school, the more likely you are to be body shamed. Okay. Like, I just think like that's true. Should it happen? No. Should people be trying to change that? Yeah, of course. But it's still true. Okay. Yeah. And so for any of these young ladies that aren't built like runway models, but are doing amazing things that require a lot of work, a lot of physical, emotional, and mental toughness and grit, and are strong. They are strong people mentally, physically, all this stuff. They get to walk down the halls, and some idiot that would pop off go, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that. You might get double-legged into the lockers." Like just the thought of that is now. And then if that young lady is friends with someone else that's built similarly, if some of these things don't happen, sometimes the best things that happen in life are the bad things that don't happen. Like, I mean, I'll give you a very quick example, and then I have one thing I want to say to you. We'll wrap it. Like, we raise money for PTSD, veterans of PTSD, and there's this program, you give them the money, and there's this, it's equine therapy and all this stuff, and there's a percentage that says if this many people go through, X amount of people don't commit suicide. And this was like in 2013 or 12, the first year we did this. And there was literally like how many families had a normal Christmas that would not have if we had not done what we did and put these very deserving people paid for their program.
Sure.
And if you can save one family from the grief of that, and that's more extreme than somebody saying something bad, but you know what? Suicide's a thing at that age. And if some kid's getting fat shamed to death, this happens. So I think wrestling is this totally powerful vehicle that people need to understand. I understand it's easy for us to say, just add the weight class, right? Like there's a bunch of work that has to go into it, but I think it's something that needs to be considered.
It 100%. And that's it. There is going to be a ripple effect, a positive one. There really is. When you're talking about the business side of education and enrollment and opportunities, and every one of those families is going to be a supporter, right? And so,
and an alumni, a donor,
and an alumni, right? And so you're looking at the big scope that says, yes, these people need to have a space. It's a good thing for us collectively. Mental wellness, opportunity, equity, just so much. There's such an upside to it. And I know that there's more education that has to. We're an information society where we got to crunch the numbers. We got to form groups. We got to have people advocate for it. We got to have this movement. Well, okay, let's go. We'll action is traction, and so let's stay keeping this form, this group of people. Let's not let them fall back.
Yeah. So action is traction is a great phrase.
Yeah.
So this is the last thing I want to say. Whenever I compare somebody to my parents, it's the biggest compliment I can give them. My mom and dad love you. My dad told me about a very funny exchange you guys had at Fargo. But my mom, from the time I was 12 years old, talked about deposits and withdrawals in your wrestling life and in relationships. And like my sophomore year, I had like the flu, and she said, David, you've put enough deposits in, you can withdraw, you're going to be okay. And in relationships, whenever I was struggling in a relationship, she said, are you more worried about your withdrawals or your deposits? Are you you want this person to do X for you? What are you doing for them? And are you keeping score? And I think like that's the other thing. Well, I did this for Mario and now he didn't call me back. Like, well, is that why you're in the relationship with Mario? Is that why he's your friend? Or you just in it and understand he will get back to you. And if he never gets back to you, then that just means you lost on this one, but it's good karma, and sort of understanding that like Mario not calling you back isn't your problem. That's a Mario problem. So I think if people learn nothing from this, the concept of deposits and withdrawals in balance and understanding it doesn't have to be even, and you don't keep score, and you do it for the concept of just being the best person. And when it comes specifically to wrestling, that you're building like a tank of physical toughness, mental toughness, technique, conditioning, cardio, strength. And when you're having a bad day, and it inevitably comes on game day, on match day, if you did all the right things, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. And that's essentially that's it, right? You're looking at if you look at a Hall of Fame career or a complete body of somebody's work, you're not looking at the days that they had their greatest day. You're not looking at the day they had their worst day. You're looking at a complete body of work, and that's what you're getting when you're getting like the Eliana Bonritos, the Sabrina Nosses. You're getting these people that are going to the tournament, but you didn't see them on the day that they had a really bad day of training. You didn't see them on the day that they had a really great day of training. You're seeing a stop sign, and you're seeing two stop signs. You're seeing a Michelle Rebish with an outstanding wrestler. You're seeing these things where they're holding all these stop signs, but it's the body of the work that makes the person. And so it's one of those where that yes, they had an amazing showing, but they're amazing people. And how they got there is more impressive than the stop sign that they won.
Yeah, I think you and I are pretty close in age, but like I would tell the guys I coach, like you know, he asked me, who's the greatest basketball player? So Michael Jordan. I'm like, is Michael Jordan the greatest basketball player you ever saw? Because one game he scored 63 against the Celtics, or 60, whatever the number was. Or is it because there was very rarely a game where he went 1 for 10 and had 5 fouls? You know, like, it's like you said, it's the consistent level of excellence. And I don't want to say this disparagingly, but like, you can luck out if you coach enough kids, you get enough kids to come to your club, somebody's invariably going to be really good and make it to the big stage, and you're going to get to be there and you're going to get to pose. I would just say this to coaches: embrace the kids publicly that lost as much as the kids that didn't, because the kids are watching. And if you only take credit for the kids that won, that probably could have won. Like, I had 3 different high school coaches in 4 years, 3 different coaches the 3 years I won state. My dad was my coach. My mom was my nutritionist. You know, I'm not saying those guys didn't do something, but, you know, like, don't just take credit for me and then the other kids that didn't win go, well, you know, they didn't do the right thing. Like, anybody can say, you know, there's a lot of people that could sit in a champion's corner and just go like, here's your iPod, you know, or here's your phone and here's your hoodie. So listen, man, I love talking to you. You're the freaking man. I don't know if I'm more proud of you or happy for you, but I called you after Fargo. We had a very cool conversation. That's going to stay between us, but basically it was a real recognize as real conversation. So I just want to say to you, I was blessed Terry Pack introduced us, because the event probably doesn't happen without. And there's people you root for. There's people you root for that you see them work hard and you want them to have success. And you are always the person that says the kids won. You know, they did it. Mom and dad were there for them. So I just want to publicly say, I've thanked you publicly for the event, but I just want to say publicly, if I had a kid, especially if I had a daughter, I would trust you to coach them. And that's probably the biggest compliment I can give you.
Sweet. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, hang on. I got to talk to you about something else. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you all next week.
See you guys.